People in Colorado still actively avoid the Silver Peak Tunnel during snowstorms. Officially, the tunnel was shut down after a structural collapse back in 1972. But unofficially, well, locals and truckers know better. They talk about the lights moving beneath the mountain. These small, pale lights that only show up deep inside the abandoned tunnel after midnight. And honestly, the most chilling detail of all is that almost everyone who actually survives the experience reports the exact same thing. The lights know your memories. So, in today's Explainer, we're dissecting a truly terrifying piece of local history to figure out what really waits in the dark. Let's dive in.
For over 50 years, we really only had rumors. But then, in 2021, a 71-year-old former railroad engineer named Harold Bennett finally broke his silence. After his wife passed away, Harold agreed to sit down and explain exactly what happened during that brutal winter of 1969. And what makes Harold's account so deeply unsettling is how it yanks this whole thing out of the realm of urban legend and into documented reality. Okay, let's look at who was actually there. We've got a 4-man maintenance crew working for the Denver and Rio Grande rail line. There's Harold, our survivor, who was just 19 at the time. Then Frank Doyle, this loud ex-miner. Eddie Mercer, the youngest guy on the crew. And Samuel Pike, the seasoned foreman. Keep these 4 in mind because their dynamic is absolutely crucial to understanding how things went so disastrously wrong when a sudden, blinding December blizzard trapped them on the mountain with literally nowhere to run.
Part 1. Trapped in the blizzard. So the storm outside gets so intensely violent that visibility drops to absolute zero. In a desperate move, Samuel, the foreman, makes a fateful call. He says they should take shelter inside the abandoned Silver Peak tunnel until morning. Now, Harold immediately protests this. Every worker knew the local lore, right? Men disappearing underground, phantom voices echoing, lights moving where there was absolutely no electricity. But they were freezing to death and their options were gone. Which brings us to a moment of heavy, dramatic irony. Frank, the tough ex-miner, literally laughs off Harold's warnings. He actually says, "Ghost stories are for tourists." Now, focus on that quote for a second, because as Harold pointed out in his interview, that was the very last normal thing anyone said that entire night. The second they stepped toward the tunnel entrance, logic just began to unravel. The contrast here was claustrophobic and totally unnatural. Outside, you've got this howling, sub-zero blizzard. But right at the tunnel entrance, the snow was completely melted. Warm air was just drifting out from the mountain. And as Samuel switched on his lantern and led the crew deeper, the howling wind just stopped. Dead silence, no storm. Literally just the echoing of their own footsteps in the dark. Part 2. The light that remembers. That dead silence really didn't last long. Soon, Harold notices the first major anomaly. Deep in the darkness ahead of them, these tiny, pale orbs are floating, just moving slowly, almost like they're watching them. And then, out of nowhere, this low, mechanical train whistle echoes from deep underground. But here's the massive red flag. There were no active tracks beneath Silver Peak anymore. As they walked deeper, the impossible just kept happening. The old brick walls inexplicably gave way to smooth black stone. Harold swore the tunnel was physically expanding, like the inside was somehow bigger than the mountain outside. And then, young Eddie stops dead in his tracks. Dozens of faint voices start whispering their names in the pitch black. Eddie stares straight ahead, tears welling up in his eyes, and he whispers, "That's my mother." Now, Eddie's mother had died when he was only 6 years old. Frank tries to grab him, telling him nobody is there, but Eddie just has this strange, vacant smile on his face. One of the pale lights floats closer, and Harold sees something horrifying. There are human faces stretching just beneath the glowing surface of the orb. It stops inches from Eddie. Eddie whispers, "She remembers me," and he just casually walks into the darkness. The lights follow him. And that was it. They literally never saw Eddie again. To really put this into perspective, the geography of what was happening was terrifyingly impossible. Silver Peak was a 2-mile tunnel. It should have taken under an hour to just walk straight through. But look at this timeline. After 3 hours underground, they were completely lost. They hadn't reached the other side. They were hopelessly trapped in a space that physically should not exist. Part 3. Something in the dark. Now, the tension completely shatters. That mechanical train whistle echoes again, but this time it is way closer. Vibrations start shaking the ground beneath their feet, like something enormous is moving right below them. Frank, The exact guy who laughed at the ghost stories earlier completely loses it. He panics and just sprints ahead into the pitch black, taking their only lantern with him. Harold and Samuel desperately chase after him in the dark. Suddenly, Frank screams, but the sound is cut off instantly. When Harold and Samuel finally catch up, Frank is just gone. Only his lantern is sitting there beside the rails. But all around that lantern, etched incredibly deep into the smooth stone walls, were massive, long claw marks, as if something impossibly huge had just dragged itself right through solid rock. So now it's just Harold and Samuel. And suddenly, hundreds of those pale, glowing orbs completely surround them. As they float silently, Harold can actually see fragments of strangers' lives trapped inside them. A birthday party, a little girl dancing, a crying soldier, a wedding. And then, one single orb floats right up to Harold. Inside, clear as day, is his father, smiling. His father, who had died in a mining accident 2 whole years prior. The light actually speaks to him in his father's exact voice, saying, "Come home, son." Harold is utterly mesmerized. He's literally about to step into the light, about to share the exact same fate as Eddie, when Samuel violently yanks him backward. Samuel is absolutely terrified and screams, "Don't listen to them, they aren't people." And the precise moment he yells that, the entire dynamic in the tunnel shifts. Part 4, The Disappearing Mountain. The lights instantly dim. Every single orb turns in perfect unison to look directly at Samuel. That train whistle becomes a deafening roar, and out of the deep darkness ahead, a massive shape begins to emerge. Harold only catches a brief glimpse, but he describes a shape way too large for the tunnel, completely covered in pale eyes and moving in absolute silence despite its massive size. In a final, desperate act of sacrifice, Samuel shoves Harold backward and just yells, "Run!" Harold turns and sprints blindly. The pale lights are actively swarming and chasing him. The whistle is just screaming in his ears. It's a completely frantic, breathless dash for survival in total darkness. As he's running for his life, Harold realizes something that just completely shatters his reality. The tunnel walls aren't just cold stone anymore. They're expanding and contracting. They're breathing. The mountain itself is a living, breathing entity. He finally sees daylight ahead. He bursts out of the entrance, and the freezing winds of the blizzard hit his face. He made it out. But when he turns around to look back at the tunnel, it's gone. Just let that sink in for a second. There is no entrance. There are no train tracks. There is literally only a solid wall of mountain rock. 12 hours later, rescue crews find Harold frozen and delirious near the highway. Officials launched these extensive searches to find the other men, but they found absolutely nothing. No missing men, no hidden tunnel, no evidence whatsoever. And of course, the official report just neatly swept it all under the rug, claiming Harold simply suffered from extreme hypothermia and hallucinated the entire ordeal. But the mystery definitely didn't end in 1969. Over the decades, hikers just kept disappearing near Silver Peak. And then, in 1998, a snowboarder caught in a blizzard recorded something impossible. Right beneath the snowfield, his camera captured small, glowing lights moving in the dark. And faintly, in the background audio, you can hear human voices whispering names. Part 5. They are already here. Which brings us right back to the present day and to Harold's 2021 interview. Harold survived, sure, but he never truly escaped. Even as an old man, he flat out refused to ever go near Silver Peak. He slept with the lights on his entire life because on quiet nights during snowstorms, he swore he could still hear that train whistle. Near the end of that final interview, the reporter asks him one last lingering question. Really, the only question that matters at this point. What do you think those lights really were? Harold sits there in absolute silence for a long time. Finally, with this terrifying calmness, he answers, "I think the mountain remembers everyone who enters it." The reporter lets out this nervous little laugh, just trying to break the heavy tension in the room. But Harold doesn't laugh. His expression is deadpan serious. Instead of laughing, Harold slowly turns his head away from the camera. He stares right past the reporter, directly at the snowy window of his living room, and that's when the horrifying realization hits. Outside his house, swirling around in the middle of a fresh winter storm, small, pale lights are actively moving through the dark. They didn't just remember him, they followed him home. So ask yourself, If the mountain remembers everyone who enters it, what exactly is waiting for you the next time you step into the dark?